You spend your life building equity, paying down your mortgage, and doing everything right. And then one day, the government tells you that the land that your home sits on, well, it might not legally be yours. And it's not because of anything you did, but because of a court decision that you never saw coming. There's a ruling in BC right now that is changing the way that we think about property ownership. And honestly, it's shaking the foundation a little. A BC Supreme Court judge, they just said that the land in a very busy developed part of Richmond, we're talking homes, farmland, warehouses, well, it actually belongs to the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 tribes, not the Crown and not the city, which means the Crown titles, well, they're defective and invalid. And if the Crown's title is invalid, what does that mean for everyone else? Here's the twist though. This isn't just about Indigenous rights or government land. It's about whether your title, that piece of paper that says that you legally own your property, actually means what you think it means. And I get it. The idea that your property rights could be up in the air, that's stressful. And you've done everything right. You've paid your bills, you followed the rules, and now suddenly there's this cloud of legal uncertainty hanging over everything. That's frustrating. I mean, it's also confusing and it raises a lot of questions. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly what this ruling means, how we got here, and why it matters even if your home isn't on the affected land. Because what's happening in Richmond is already sending ripples throughout the entire province. And if you own property in BC, this is something that you need to understand. Because when you've built your life on something, the last thing that you want to hear is that the ground beneath it, well, it's suddenly up for debate. That type of uncertainty, it doesn't just affect one neighborhood. It starts to shift the entire landscape. So let's step back for a second and walk through exactly what happened here. Let's start with the ruling itself. In August 2025, the BC Supreme Court, they made a pretty major decision, finding that the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 tribes, they hold Aboriginal title over about 5.7 square kilometers of land in Richmond. And that includes private homes, farmland, and even commercial properties along the south arm of the Fraser River. In fact, the court, they went so far as to say that the Crown and the city land titles were invalid. Now, the judge did make clear that private homeowners were not the target here, but she also gave everyone 18 months to figure out what is going to happen next. So the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the province, and the federal government. So this is not over yet. It's just been paused. And of course, the city and the province, they've already filed appeals right away, but that uncertainty, that's already landed. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if this only affects a small part of Richmond, does it really matter to anyone else? And the answer is absolutely. Because what happened here, well, it sets a new precedent. And that's where the ripple effects begin. That's exactly the mindset that gets people blindsided, because this ruling, it doesn't just affect Richmond. It sets a legal precedent that could trigger more claims in other cities. And when that happens, it won't be theoretical anymore. This ruling is the first time Aboriginal title has been recognized over fully developed urban land. And that changes the game. It opens the door for similar claims in other parts of BC, especially since most of the province is still unceded land. And when something this significant happens in one community, it will change how lenders think, also how insurers underwrite, and how buyers and sellers approach their deals. Now, even if your property isn't in that zone, market reaction, well, it can still touch you. And we're starting to see that already. The city of Richmond, they sent out letters to around 150 property owners, warning them that their land titles could be compromised. And then on October the 28th, they held a public meeting, and that room, it was full. Emotions were high, and the answers, well, they were few and far between. Because while legal language talks about things like coexistence, where the Aboriginal title and private ownership can live side by side, in the real world, that really doesn't work. Because the truth is, lenders and insurers, they don't deal in legal theory. They want certainty. And if the ownership structure, if it's murky in any way, things are going to slow down, or even worse, they could grind to a complete halt. And that brings us to something that a lot of people, they still don't fully understand, which is how did we even get here in the first place? Because the real story goes way beyond and way deeper than this first court case. Now, to really make sense of what's happening here, you've got to understand one thing, and it's something that most people, they don't even realize. Almost 90% of BC is what's called unceded land, meaning that no treaties were ever signed. The land wasn't formally handed over, so it was just assumed and it was built on. And that reality, it was ignored for a very long time. And then in 2019, the 𝗏𝗏𝗃 tribes, they filed a claim on land in Richmond. And after years in court, well, they won. Now, for the first time, a judge has recognized Aboriginal title in a developed urban area. And that's forcing everyone, we're talking homeowners, lenders, and the legal system, to confront a question we've been avoiding for decades. If land ownership was never properly ceded, what does that mean for everything else sitting on top of it? So the next question is, what do you do if you're directly impacted or just nearby? How do you protect yourself in the middle of all of this legal and financial gray area? Well, if you own a property in or around that affected zone, you're not powerless, okay? But you do need to be proactive. You want to start by talking with your lender. And, if you've got a mortgage renewal coming up, do not wait, all right? These situations, they take time to sort out, and you want to give your lender that time necessary to assess absolutely everything. Also, you're going to want to check in with your lawyer or your notary and make sure that the title insurance that you have is up to date and understand exactly what it covers and, of course, what it does not cover. If you're thinking about selling, let's be honest here, it's probably going to be tough. Buyers, they're going to hesitate when there's this much uncertainty in the air. So you're going to need to manage your expectations. You're probably going to need to adjust your price, and definitely you're going to want to plan for a longer timeline. And if you don't have to sell right now, well, you might be better off just waiting this out. And of course, if you're a buyer and you're looking in this area, you want to ask questions and you want to understand the boundaries of this claim and get very clear on it. Get yourself a lawyer who can walk you through the risks in plain English. This is about being smart, staying informed and not getting blindsided. Now, I know this all sounds very messy, and honestly, it is, right? But there is a path going forward, and it's just not going to happen overnight. So the next step is going to be the Court of Appeal, and that's probably going to take us well into 2026. Now, they could leave the ruling as is, or they could change parts of it, or they might just send it back and tell everyone to work it out, negotiate something. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I'm going to bet that the province and the 𝗏𝗏𝗃 are already trying to sort something out. Now, whatever the outcome, one thing is for sure. Until there's real clarity, this uncertainty is going to weigh on the market. And until we figure out how to balance those two forces, you can expect more cases like this, more questions about ownership, and more headlines that will shake people's confidence in our system. What's happening right now is just the beginning. Whether it's this ruling or something else that's already taking shape behind the scenes, there are more changes coming, and they could hit closer to home than most people think. So if you want to understand how this could ripple into other cities or what might happen next, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on my next update. And as always, if you want to chat more about the ins and outs of buying or selling, feel free to reach out. There is a link in the description box below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.